Hello, boys and girls. My name is Marissa, and I am the Director of Development and Alumni Relations at Penn State Harrisburg, and I'm also the Vice President at the Boys and Girls Club of Harrisburg. So today, during our Boys and Girls Club story time, I thought I might bring to you one of my children's favorite book series. It's called The Magic Tree House. And when I was growing up, I didn't like to read, and I remember in like second, third, and fourth grade, I hated it when the teacher would make me read out loud because I didn't do a very good job. And even today, sometimes I stumble, but what I did find is the more that I read, the better I got. And the more I read, the more I loved stories because they got to take me to these really wonderful places in my head, and I got to get pictures that I could imagine and places and ideas, and I just started to really love reading. So these books are pretty fast. They're chapter books, but they're small and they go pretty quick, and they have some pictures. So I thought it might be really fun if I would take you on a journey with me. And the first one of the Magic Tree House series is called Dinosaurs Before Dark. It's written by Mary Pope Osborne. And who doesn't love dinosaurs? So I hope you enjoy this. Come along, take a journey with me. We got a few chapters to go. It looks like 10 chapters. So I'm gonna try and see how many I can get done today. We'll read for about 15 or 20 minutes. And it starts, chapter 1, Into the Woods. Help! A monster, said Annie. Yeah, sure, said Jack. A real monster in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania? Run, Jack, said Annie. She ran up the road. Oh, brother, this is what he got for spending time with his 7-year-old sister. Annie loved pretend stuff, but Jack was 8.5. He liked real things. Watch out, Jack! The monster's coming! Race ya! No thanks, said Jack. Annie raced alone into the woods. Jack looked at the sky. The sun was about to set. Come on, Annie. It's time to go home. But Annie had disappeared. Jack waited. No Annie. Annie! He shouted again. Jack, Jack, come here! Jack groaned. It's better be good, he said. Jack left the road and headed into the woods. The trees were lit with a golden late afternoon light. Come here, called Annie. There she was, standing under a tall oak tree. Look, she said. She was pointing at a rope ladder. The longest rope ladder Jack had ever seen. Wow, he whispered. The ladder went all the way up to the top of the tree. There, at the top, was a treehouse. It was tucked between two branches. That must be the highest treehouse in the world, said Annie. Who built it? Asked Jack. I've never seen it before. I don't know, but I'm going up, said Annie. No, we don't want to know who it belongs to, said Jack. Just for a teeny minute, said Annie. She started up the ladder. Annie, come back. She kept climbing. Here's the picture. Jack sighed. Annie, it's almost dark. We have to go home. Annie disappeared inside the treehouse. Annie! Jack waited a moment. He was about to call again when Annie poked her head out of the treehouse window. Books! She shouted. What? It's filled with books. Oh, man! Jack loved books. He pushed his glasses into place. He gripped the sides of the rope ladder, and up he went. Chapter 2. The Monster. Jack crawled through a hole in the treehouse floor. Wow! The treehouse was filled with books. Books everywhere. Very old books with dusty covers. New books with shiny, bright covers. Look, you can see far, far away, said Annie. She was peering out the treehouse window. Jack looked out the window with her. Down below were the tops of the other trees. In the distance, she saw the Frog Creek Library. The elementary school, the park. Annie pointed in the other direction. There's our house, she said. Sure enough, there was a white wooden house with a green porch. Next door was neighbor's black dog, Henry. He looked very tiny. "Hi, Henry!" shouted Annie. "Shh!" said Jack. "We're not supposed to be up here." He glanced around the treehouse again. "I wonder who owns all these books," he said. He noticed bookmarks were sticking out of many of them. "I like this one," said Annie. She held up a book with a castle on the cover. "Here's a book about Pennsylvania," said Jack. He turned the page to the bookmark. "Hey, there's a picture of Frog Creek in here," said Jack. "It's a picture of these woods." "Oh, here's a book for you," said Annie. She held up a book about dinosaurs. A blue silk bookmark was sticking out of it. "Let me see it." Jack sat down his backpack and grabbed the book from her. "You look at that one and I'll look at the one about castles," said Annie. "No, we better not," said Jack. "We don't know who these books belong to." But even as he said this, Jack opened the dinosaur book to where the bookmark was. He couldn't help himself. He turned to a picture of an ancient flying reptile, a pterodon. He touched a huge bat-like wings. "Wow," whispered Jack. "I wish I could go see a pterodon for real." Jack studied the picture of the odd-looking creature soaring through the sky. "Ah!" screamed Annie. "What?" said Jack. "A monster!" cried Annie. She pointed to the treehouse window. "Stop pretending, Annie," said Jack. "No, really," said Annie. Jack looked out the window. A giant creature was gliding above the treetops. He had a long, weird crest on the back of his head, a skinny beak, and huge bat-like wings. It was a real live pterodon. The creature curved through the sky. He was coming straight toward the treehouse. He looked like a glider plane. The wind began to blow. Here's the next picture. The leaves trembled. Suddenly the creature soared up, high into the sky. Jack nearly fell out the window trying to see it. The wind picked up and was whistling now. The treehouse started to spin. "What's happening?" cried Jack. "Get down!" shouted Annie. She pulled him back from the window. The treehouse was spinning faster and faster. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. He held on to Annie. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Sunlight slanted through the window. There was Annie, the books, his backpack. The treehouse was still up high in an oak tree. But it wasn't the same oak tree. Chapter 3. Where is here? Jack looked out the window. He looked down at the picture in the book. He looked back at the window. The world outside and the world in the picture, they were exactly the same. The pterodon was soaring through the sky. The ground was covered with ferns and tall grass. There was a winding stream, a sloping hill, and volcanoes in the distance. "Where are we?" stammered Jack. The pterodon glided down to the base of their tree. The creature coasted to a stop and stood very still. "What happened to us?" said Annie. She looked at Jack. He looked at her. "I don't know," said Jack. "I was looking at the picture in the book." "And you said, 'Wow, I wish I could go see a pterodon for real?'" said Annie. "Yeah. And then we saw one. In the Frog Creek woods," said Jack. "Yeah, and then the wind got loud and the tree started to spin," said Annie. "And we landed here," said Jack. "So that means what?" said Annie. "Nothing," said Jack. He shook his head. "None of this can be real." Annie looked out the window again. "But he's real," she said. "He's very real." Jack looked out the window with her. The pterodon was standing at the base of the oak tree. Like a guard, his giant wings were spread out on either side of him. "Hi!" Annie shouted. "Shh!" said Jack. "We're not supposed to be up here." "But where is here?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. "Hi!" Annie called to the creature. The pterodon looked up at them. "Where is here?" Annie called down. "You're nuts. He can't talk," said Jack. "But maybe the book can tell us." Jack looked down at the book. He read the words under the picture. This flying reptile lived in the Cretaceous period. It vanished 65 million years ago. Here's the next picture. No, impossible. They couldn't have landed in a time 65 million years ago. Jack, said Annie. He's nice. Nice? Yeah, I can tell. Let's go down and talk to him. Talk to him? Annie started down the rope ladder. Hey, shouted Jack. But Annie kept going. Are you crazy? Called Jack. Annie dropped to the ground. She stepped boldly up to the ancient creature. Chapter 4. Jack gasped as Annie held out her hand. Oh, brother! She was always trying to make friends with animals, but this was going too far. Don't get too close to him, Annie, Jack shouted, but Annie touched the pterodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was talking to him. What in the world was she saying? Jack took a deep breath. Okay, he would go down too. It would be good to examine the creature, take notes, like a scientist. Jack started down the rope ladder. When he got down to the ground, Jack was only a few feet away from the creature. The creature stared at Jack. His eyes were bright and alert. He's soft, Jack, said Annie. He feels like Henry. Jack snorted. He's no dog, Annie. Feel him, Jack, said Annie. Jack didn't move. Don't think, Jack, just do it. Jack stepped forward. He put his arm out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting. A thin layer of fuzz covered the pterodon's skin. Soft, huh? Said Annie. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a pencil and a notebook. He wrote, Fuzzy skin. What are you doing? Asked Annie. Taking notes, said Jack. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live pterodon. Jack looked at the pterodon again. The creature had a bony crest on top of its head. The crest was longer than Jack's arm. I wonder how smart he is, said Jack. Very smart, said Annie. Don't count on it, said Jack. His brain's probably no bigger than a bean. No, he's very smart. I can feel it, said Annie. I'm going to call him Henry. Jack wrote in his small notebook, Small brain, ? Jack looked at the creature again. Maybe he's a mutant, he said. The creature tilted his head. Annie laughed. He's no mutant, Jack. Well, what's he doing here then? Where's this place? Said Jack. Annie leaned in close to the pterodon. Do you know where you are, Henry? She asked softly. The creature fixed his eyes on Annie. His long jaws were open and closed, like a giant pair of scissors. Are you trying to talk to me, Henry? Asked Annie. Forget it, Annie, Jack wrote in his notebook. Mouth like scissors. Did we come to a time long ago, Henry? Annie asked. Is this the place from long ago? Suddenly, she gasped. Jack! He looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Chapter 5. Gold in the Grass. Go, go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack. He pushed Annie toward the rope ladder. Bye, Henry, she said. Go, said Jack. He gave Annie a big push. Quit it, she said. But she started up the ladder. Jack scrambled after her. They tumbled into the treehouse. They were panting at the lookout window at the dinosaur. He was standing on the hilltop, eating flowers off a tree. Oh, man, whispered Jack. We are in a time long ago. The dinosaurs looked like a huge rhinoceros, only had 3 horns instead of 1, 2 long ones above his eyes, and 1 on his nose. He had been a big shield-like thing behind his head. Triceratops, said Jack. Does he eat people? Annie whispered. I'll look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. There, he said. He pointed to a picture of a Triceratops. He read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plants, no meat. Let's go see him, said Annie. Are you nuts? Said Jack. Don't you want to take notes about him? Asked Annie. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Triceratops. Jack sighed. She was right. Let's go, he said. He shoved the dinosaur book into his pack. He slung it over his shoulder and started down the ladder. On the way down, Jack stopped. He called up to Annie. Just promise you won't pet him. I promise. Promise you won't kiss him? I promise. Promise you won't talk to him? I promise. Promise you won't. Go, go, she said. Jack went. Annie followed. When they stepped off the ladder, the pterodon gave them a kind look. Annie blew a kiss at him. Be back soon, Henry, she said cheerfully. Shh, said Jack. And he led the way through the ferns, slowly and carefully. When he reached the bottom of the hill, he kneeled behind a fat bush. Annie knelt beside him and started to speak. Shh, Jack put his finger to his lips. Annie made a face. Jack peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was incredibly big, bigger than a truck. It was eating flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his pack. He wrote, Eats flowers. Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He studied the Triceratops again. He wrote, Eats slowly. Annie nudged him hard. Jack looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her fingers through the air. She pointed to the dinosaur. She smiled. She was teasing. She waved at Jack. Jack started to grab her. She laughed and jumped away. She fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. Get back, whispered Jack. Too late. The big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of his mouth. Oops, said Annie. Get back, Jack shouted at her. He looks nice, Jack. Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie. No, he's nice, Jack. Nice? But the Triceratops just gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and loped away, down the side of the hill. Bye, said Annie. She turned back to Jack. See? Jack grunted, but he wrote in his notebook. Nice. Here's the next picture. Come on, let's look around some more, said Annie. As Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. He reached out and picked it up. A medallion. A gold medallion. A letter was engraved on the medallion. A fancy M. Oh man, someone came here before us, Jack said softly. And we're halfway through the book already. It's getting good, isn't it? Stay tuned for part 2 of Dinosaurs Before Dark by Mary Pope Osborne. Hope you have a great day.